Welcome to Great Lives. I'm Daniel. Here, we honor individuals whose journeys shaped history and inspired millions. Their courage, talent, and dedication left a lasting mark across generations. Join us as we revisit their stories from film, music, sports, and culture, celebrating lives that continue to inspire and remain unforgettable through time. Edith Eva Eger was born on September 29, 1927, in Košice, a city that has belonged at different times to Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and Slovakia. She grew up in a Hungarian-speaking Jewish family with a strong focus on education and the arts. As a young girl, she trained in ballet and gymnastics and was talented enough to be associated with Hungary's Olympic gymnastics circle before the outbreak of World War II changed her life completely. In 1944, after the Nazi occupation of Hungary, she and her family were forced into a ghetto and later deported to Auschwitz. There, she was separated from her parents, who did not survive, while she and her sister Magda endured the camps and managed to survive extreme hardship. She also survived Mauthausen and a death march before being liberated by American soldiers in 1945. After the war, she returned briefly home, later married fellow survivor Bela Eger, and moved to the United States in 1949. In America, she rebuilt her life, became a clinical psychologist, and earned her PhD in Texas. Her work focused on trauma recovery and healing, shaped deeply by her own experiences. She authored influential books and became a widely respected speaker. She passed away on April 27, 2026, at the age of 98, leaving behind a legacy of resilience and healing. Dolores Keane passed away peacefully at her home in Ireland, at the age of 72. A founding voice of Dadannan, she played an important role in shaping the sound and spirit of Irish folk music for decades. Her interpretations of traditional songs, including The Rambling Irishman, were known for their emotional depth and authenticity, carried by a voice often described as rich, haunting, and deeply human. Through her work, she helped bring Irish musical heritage to audiences around the world. Beyond her contributions with the group, she also performed with respected artists such as John Prine and Emmylou Harris, further broadening her musical influence. She was widely regarded not only as a singer but as a storyteller who could capture emotion in every performance. Her legacy continues to live on through the songs she helped preserve and the generations of musicians she inspired, ensuring her voice remains a lasting part of Irish folk tradition. Her recordings remain widely cherished by listeners who continue to discover her music today. DJ Daniel Ware, widely known as DJ Dan, passed away at the age of 57, leaving behind a significant legacy in electronic music. He was regarded as one of the influential figures in shaping the West Coast house music sound, contributing to a style that brought high energy, rhythm, and emotional depth to dance floors. Throughout his career, he was more than just a performer on a lineup. For many fans, he was a creator of memorable moments and shared experiences within club culture. His tracks, including the well-known Phone track and the distinctive Zipper track, became defining staples in underground clubs and festival sets, reflecting his signature blend of groove-driven and playful production. Over the years, he earned consistent respect from fellow DJs and audiences, establishing himself as a dedicated house music pioneer. His influence extended across decades, and his work continues to resonate in clubs, playlists, and memories, serving as a reminder of an artist who played an important role in shaping the sound and spirit of modern dance music. Daryl Sheets, widely known for his long career in reality television centered on storage auctions, has died at the age of 67. He was discovered at a residence in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, on April 22nd, in the early hours of the morning. Authorities have stated that the circumstances are still being reviewed, with official details expected from the local medical examiner's office. His passing marks the end of a life that became closely associated with the world of auction hunting and entertainment for more than a decade. Before gaining television attention, he spent over 30 years working in storage auctions, a business that required strong instincts and a willingness to take risks. Known for his bold approach, he often made high-stakes decisions in search of valuable finds, earning him a memorable reputation among peers. He later became a familiar face on a popular reality series focused on storage unit auctions, where his personality and discoveries drew viewers in. Beyond his work, he valued his family deeply, often working alongside his son and maintaining close personal relationships. He leaves behind a legacy of determination, risk-taking, and lasting influence in his field. Christopher Sims, the Nobel Prize-winning economist whose research transformed modern understanding of inflation, interest rates, and economic policy, has passed away at his home in Minneapolis at the age of 83. According to reports, his death resulted from injuries sustained in a fall. Sims was widely recognized for bringing clarity to some of economics' most difficult questions, helping policymakers and researchers better understand how different forces within the economy influence one another over time. In 2011, he received the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences for his groundbreaking work on cause and effect in macroeconomic systems, research that reshaped how economists interpret data and respond to financial challenges. Beyond his academic achievements, Sims was admired as a thoughtful teacher and mentor who inspired generations of students during his years at Princeton University, as well as earlier roles at Harvard University, Yale University, and the University of Minnesota. Colleagues and former students remember him not only for his brilliant mind, but also for his humility, curiosity, and generosity in sharing knowledge. His influence will continue to live on through the ideas he introduced, the students he guided, and the lasting impact he made on the world of economics. Bo Luders, best known as the guitarist for the hardcore punk band Harm's Way, has passed away at the age of 38, leaving behind a strong legacy within the underground music community. Through his powerful guitar playing, Bo helped define a sound that blended the raw intensity of hardcore punk with the heaviness of metal, creating music that connected deeply with fans around the world. His performances carried a rare mix of aggression, honesty, and emotion that made him stand out both on stage and in the studio. Outside of music, Bo was also widely recognized as a co-host of the Hard Lore podcast, where he openly shared stories, experiences, and conversations about punk and metal culture. Listeners appreciated his straightforward personality, sense of humor, and genuine love for the scene that shaped his life. Friends and fellow musicians remember him as someone who stayed true to himself and remained deeply passionate about music and community. His influence reached far beyond performances, inspiring many people through both his creativity and authenticity. Although his passing is a heartbreaking loss for fans and loved ones, Bo Luders' voice and energy will continue to live on through the music he created, the memories he shared, and the impact he made on the hardcore and metal world. Oprah Winfrey's story is often told as a straight line from suffering to success, but that framing misses the complexity of what she actually became. She rose from extreme poverty in rural Mississippi to become one of the most influential media figures in modern history, redefining what daytime television could be and how audiences relate to a host. Her name became synonymous with trust, emotional honesty, and cultural influence. When she spoke, people listened not just because of fame, but because she had turned vulnerability into a form of authority. Yet behind the polished image of success was a life shaped by instability, trauma, discipline, and relentless self-reinvention. What made her journey extraordinary was not only the scale of her achievements, but the emotional weight she carried while building them. She did not emerge from comfort or privilege. She emerged from conditions where survival itself required adaptation and silence. Over time, she transformed personal pain into communication, and communication into empire. Her story is not just about media dominance, but about a person learning how to exist in a world that repeatedly tested her sense of worth. To understand her rise, it is necessary to move backward into the environments that shaped her earliest understanding of identity and voice. A childhood shaped by poverty and early fragility, Oprah's earliest years unfolded in a rural Mississippi environment defined by poverty, limited opportunity, and social constraint. Born in 1954 in Kosciuszko, she entered a world where stability was rare and resources even rarer. Her mother was a young domestic worker, and her father was absent for long stretches of her early life. She was often raised by her grandmother in conditions where basic comforts were scarce. Clothing was sometimes handmade from improvised materials, and daily life revolved around labor rather than leisure. For a child, this environment created a sense that survival came before everything else. Despite hardship, early signs of intelligence and curiosity emerged. She learned to read at a young age, guided by religious texts and strict discipline. Words became both refuge and structure, offering her a sense of order in an otherwise unpredictable world. But discipline in her household was also harsh, and emotional safety was inconsistent. As she moved between caretakers and environments, she learned early how quickly stability could disappear. These formative years built both resilience and sensitivity, traits that would later define her communication style. Even before fame or trauma entered the public narrative, her foundation was already marked by instability, adaptation, and an unusually deep relationship with language. Trauma, silence, and the weight of early violations. During her childhood and early adolescence, Oprah experienced repeated sexual abuse, beginning around the age of 9 and continuing for several years. These events occurred within environments where she should have been safe, creating a lasting rupture in her sense of trust. Like many survivors, she did not initially have the language or emotional framework to fully understand what was happening. Instead, she internalized blame and confusion, interpreting the situation through the limited understanding available to a child. Silence became a survival mechanism, reinforced by fear, shame, and the absence of consistent protection. The psychological impact of these experiences extended far beyond the incidents themselves. They shaped how she viewed her body, her voice, and her right to be heard. Emotional isolation became a constant companion, even when she was surrounded by people. Over time, this internal burden contributed to behavioral shifts, including withdrawal and attempts to cope through small acts of rebellion. The trauma did not remain static. It influenced her development, relationships, and self-perception for years. Later in life, she would speak openly about these experiences, not as defining limitations, but as formative wounds that required transformation rather than concealment. Adolescence, relocation, and the search for structure, a turning point in her youth, came when she was sent to live with her father in Nashville. This transition introduced a dramatically different environment from her earlier childhood. Her father, strict and disciplined, imposed structure, expectations, and accountability in ways that contrasted sharply with the instability she had previously known. While the relationship was not emotionally soft, it provided a framework in which she could begin to stabilize her life. Rules replaced chaos, and routine replaced unpredictability. This period was marked by tension between emotional pain and emerging discipline. She was required to focus on education, reading, and personal development under strict supervision. Although difficult, this structure forced her to redirect energy into performance and achievement. School became a space where she could channel expression more constructively, particularly through public speaking and performance activities. Teachers began to notice her ability to articulate ideas with clarity and emotional resonance. Gradually, she started to rebuild a sense of identity that was not solely defined by earlier trauma. This phase did not erase her past, but it began to redirect her future, laying the groundwork for communication as both skill and survival strategy. First steps into media and the discovery of Voice Oprah's entry into broadcasting began unusually early. As a teenager, she participated in a public speaking contest that led to opportunities in local radio. Her voice, already distinctive in tone and emotional clarity, translated naturally into audio media. At a time when representation of Black women in broadcasting was extremely limited, her presence on air was both rare and significant. She was not yet a national figure, but she was already developing the skills that would define her career: emotional connection, narrative control, and conversational presence. While attending university, she continued working in radio and eventually transitioned into television. Early roles included news reporting and anchoring, positions that demanded objectivity and emotional restraint. However, her natural instinct leaned toward empathy rather than detachment, which sometimes placed her at odds with traditional broadcasting expectations. She was learning, experimenting, and adjusting in real time. These early professional years were not yet success in the public sense, but they were essential in shaping her understanding of media as a space for human connection rather than distance. Setbacks in Baltimore and professional transformation. A significant setback occurred during her time in Baltimore, where she worked in television news. Initially hired for her potential, she soon encountered rigid expectations about appearance, tone, and professional distance. The environment emphasized control and uniformity, which conflicted with her natural emotional expressiveness. She was criticized for being too empathetic on air, particularly when covering human tragedy. These criticisms were framed as professional shortcomings, but they reflected a deeper tension between her style and traditional journalism norms. At the same time, she faced personal challenges within the station environment, including pressure to conform physically and stylistically. These experiences contributed to a growing sense of displacement within the news format. However, a shift began when she was reassigned to a morning talk format. Unlike news broadcasting, this format allowed greater emotional range and conversational interaction. In this space, her natural strengths became visible. The ability to listen, respond, and connect began to outweigh the constraints she had previously struggled with. This transition marked an important pivot. What had been considered a weakness in one format became the foundation of her future success in another. Chicago breakthrough and the reinvention of daytime television. The opportunity in Chicago marked a decisive turning point in her career. She was brought in to host a struggling morning talk show that had low ratings and limited audience engagement. Expectations were modest, but the environment allowed her to reshape the format in ways that aligned with her instincts. Instead of maintaining distance, she engaged directly with guests and audiences, creating an atmosphere of shared experience rather than observation. Her approach quickly distinguished the program from competitors. Emotional openness, relatability, and conversational authenticity became central features of her hosting style. Within a short period, the show's ratings improved dramatically, surpassing established competitors and transforming it into a national phenomenon. This success demonstrated that audiences were responding to something previously undervalued in television: emotional truth as entertainment. It also marked the beginning of her evolution from host to cultural figure, as her influence began extending beyond television into publishing, politics, and public discourse. The rise of a cultural empire and global influence. As her show expanded nationally, Oprah Winfrey became one of the most recognizable figures in media. The program ran for decades, reaching millions of viewers daily and covering a wide range of topics including relationships, trauma, health, and social issues. Her influence extended beyond television through book selections that regularly became bestsellers and interviews that shaped public conversations. Over time, she became not just a media personality but a cultural institution. Her success also translated into extraordinary financial achievement, making her one of the wealthiest women in the world and a symbol of self-made success. However, with scale came responsibility. The emotional demands of hosting deeply personal conversations for thousands of episodes created an ongoing psychological burden. She often absorbed the emotional weight of her guests' experiences while continuing to perform publicly as a source of stability and empathy. This dual role, both listener and icon, became central to her identity and also contributed to internal exhaustion that was not visible to audiences. Wealth, pressure, and the limits of success. Despite immense financial success and global recognition, Oprah's life was not free from pressure or limitation. Maintaining a long-running daily show required constant emotional availability and creative consistency. The expectation to remain authentic while performing at scale created an unusual contradiction. Intimacy became professional labor. Over time, this led to emotional fatigue that was difficult to separate from work identity. Success also altered personal relationships. Trust became more complicated, as access to her life often carried public or professional implications. Romantic and familial dynamics were influenced by her visibility and resources, creating distance that was not always visible externally. Even at the height of influence, there were moments of isolation that contrasted sharply with her public image. This tension between external admiration and internal solitude became a recurring theme in her later reflections on success and fulfillment. The personal cost of visibility and self-image struggles, one of the most persistent challenges in her life, involved body image and public scrutiny. From early in her career, her weight fluctuations became a subject of media attention and public commentary. Unlike many aspects of her professional life, this area was discussed widely and often critically. The attention created additional psychological pressure, turning a personal health journey into a public narrative. Food had long functioned as emotional comfort, particularly during periods of stress or trauma recovery. As fame increased, so did scrutiny, creating a cycle where emotional strain and public judgment intersected. Despite external success, she often described internal struggles with self-perception and self-acceptance. These experiences highlight a contrast between public empowerment and private vulnerability, illustrating that visibility does not eliminate personal struggle. Instead, it can amplify it in unexpected ways. After the spotlight fades and the self remains, when Oprah Winfrey stepped away from the daily rhythm of her talk show, the absence was not just professional, but existential. For decades, her life had been structured around constant output, stories, interviews, emotional exchanges, and the unbroken cadence of being on for millions of viewers. Removing that structure created a silence that was unfamiliar, almost disorienting. The end of the show did not end her influence, but it did change the texture of her days. Instead of responding to other people's lives in real time, she was left with her own, without the protective buffer of a format that had long given shape and purpose to her identity. In this quieter space, reflection became more prominent than performance. The same qualities that made her successful, deep empathy, emotional absorption, attentiveness, now turned inward. That inward turn can be both clarifying and uncomfortable for someone who has spent decades in constant external engagement. The questions that emerge in such a phase are not about success or failure, but about continuity. Who remains when the role is removed, and what parts of the self were built for survival versus chosen for peace. For someone whose life had been defined by visibility, stepping beyond it meant learning to exist without an audience, where meaning is no longer reflected back through applause but constructed privately, slowly, and without guarantee of recognition. Enduring legacy and transformation beyond the screen. By the end of her television career, Oprah Winfrey had fundamentally reshaped the landscape of daytime media. She transformed talk shows into platforms for emotional storytelling, redefined audience engagement, and demonstrated the commercial power of authenticity. Her influence extended into publishing, philanthropy, and cultural discourse, making her one of the most impactful media figures of her era. Yet her legacy is not only institutional but also human. It reflects a life built through resilience, adaptation, and continuous reinvention. She turned personal adversity into a framework for connection, creating spaces where others could share their stories. At the same time, her journey illustrates the complexity of success, how achievement and fulfillment do not always align. Her story remains a study in contrast, visibility and loneliness, power and vulnerability, control and memory. In the end, her legacy is not only what she built, but what she endured while building it.